Hello, everyone. This is Michael, host of the Pound for Pound Box Report. You get ready to listen to episode 259. Episode 259 was originally recorded live on Monday, July the 15th. During that particular episode, some strange things started to happen. One of our guests, Daniel, he had issues with power. I originally began having issues with power. As a result, the live recording, I had to suddenly scrap that. And what I did was, for this particular episode, what you're about to hear is the beginning portion of our live recording, which was a tribute to one Pernell Sweet Pete Whitaker. As all boxing fans know by now, Pernell Sweet Pete Whitaker, one of the best who ever laced on the gloves, suddenly passed away late last weekend, dying at the age of 55. So what you're about to hear on this abbreviated episode of Pound for Pound Box Report is our tribute to one Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. So sit back, get ready to listen to episode 259 of Pound for Pound Box Report, abbreviated version, our tribute to one Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker.
You are now listening to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, where you hear all things boxing.
Welcome to another episode of Pound for Pound Box Report, episode 259. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail from Communities Digital News, Gus from Corruption and Boxing, Jacob from, I thought Jacob would be on here, Jacob from Jab Hook. Hopefully we'll have him back. For those who are new, Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube show, podcast, as well as blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find out all information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the place to go to. P4P Boxing Report, P4PBoxingReport.wordpress.com. That is the link. I see Daniel has joined us from The Inscriber. Thanks for joining us. The link to catch everything Pound for Pound Boxing Report, P4PBoxingReport.wordpress.com. Check the rather blog page. You will find the links to find us all over social media. Links to find us on all platforms that carry RSS feeds, the SoundClouds, the iTunes, the Google Play Music, the Google Podcasts, and whatnot, as well as links to donate. Let donation be the best nation. I don't care how much you give, 50 cents, $1, $2, $5, $10. Or if you want to give a substantial amount, please do. Got a Cash Me and PayPal donation link button there on Pound for Pound Box Report. Same general area where you see links to the social media pages, links to the where to find us via podcast. Normally, we do recaps, news, previews, but going to start the show on a different note, a very, very sad note. As earlier this morning, I was tipped to some really tragic and devastating news that still has me pretty shook up. As if you are a fighter, if you are a fan of a certain age, my age in particular, if you're around or old enough to remember boxing in the 1990s, one of the best fighters during that decade, arguably the best fighter during that decade, was Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker, multiple division, multiple time world champion, specifically lightweight, super lightweight, welterweight, junior middleweight. News came down the pike. I was tipped to it this morning that Sweet Pea has unfortunately passed away at age 55. Don't know all the details, so I'll just give as little as I can when I know. Was walking the intersection last night around 10 p.m. Unfortunately, he was hit by a civilian, taken to hospital, later on pronounced dead. The news has sent shockwaves through the boxing world as I've seen thoughts and prayers and commemorations and tweets and whatnot and video clips all over boxing Twitter, on social media today, talking about his fights and interviews and whatnot. And because of the real tragedy of his passing, given how prominent a fighter he was, Hall of Fame fighter, um, arguably the best defensive fighter that the sport has ever seen, I want to take time here on Pound for Pound Boxing Report to talk the life and the career of one Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. And I'll start the show with you, Gail, lady first, always. Um, I'm gutted, devastated. When Muhammad Ali passed a couple of weeks ago, you knew his passing was coming because of the illness. So you had at least some time to prepare for it, even as if you were crushed when word came about that he had finally moved on. Uh, no time uh, no time for this. No time to get yourself ready. Just hit us like a bomb out of nowhere, and um, the level of hurt, the level of surprise has many kind of in a bit of daze. So, your thoughts about the tragic passing of one Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker?
Well, of course, most of us woke up to this morning as it happened late last night in Virginia Beach. Pernell, as most people know, is originally from Norfolk, Virginia. I just have to check the Virginia Pilot. Virginia Pilot is the local newspaper in that area, and there is an updated report as of a few hours ago with a few more details. Apparently, Whitaker was walking on foot. Was in an intersection, was hit by a pickup truck, died at the scene. The driver, according to Whitaker's son, Devin, said the driver just did not see him. He was wearing dark clothes. The road was dark, and it really falls into the category of a tragic accident. No drugs, no alcohol. Driver stayed at the scene. I can tell you, having worked for a district attorney, frequently people flee the scene not because they don't know they hit somebody, but because they are driving under the influence. And a hit and run carries less criminal penalty than staying on scene and being responsible but being DUI. In this case, that was not a factor, which is very good news in a way. So I can only imagine how the driver must feel. This man is absolutely a local hero in that area, even for people who don't know a whole lot about boxing. But for the boxing world, this is just a body blow. It really is. He was 55 years old, and while he'd been out of the ring for decades at this point, he still remained involved in boxing, close to boxing. There was a big fight week in Las Vegas. He was there, and he was planning to be on hand for Pacquiao filming this week. He was involved in certain activities. In fact, I believe, and I will check this while we're chatting, there is going to be on Wednesday, as one of the kind of opening events for the media during Fight Week, a panel discussion with veteran greats of boxing, and I believe Whitaker was scheduled for that roundtable. I'll have to check. I know Eric Morales is scheduled for the roundtable. Marco Antonio Barrera is scheduled. I believe Whitaker was there. And Whitaker was absolutely a fixture, loved. He never turned down a fan. He enjoyed doing interviews. He said yes to every request. And of course, he was promoted by Main Events, who, full disclosure, I have done work with in the past, not currently engaged with them at all. And he called Main Events in the office on a regular basis. He kept in touch with Kathy Duva, her late husband, of course, that trained Pernell and promoted Pernell for his career. And he stayed very tight with current matchmaker Jolene Mazzone. She was devastated, as you can only imagine. So condolences to the entire main events family, as well as Whitaker's family and the greater boxing family. This is going to be one of those 10 counts that really, really hurts.
First and foremost, I want to say what you need. Thanks for joining us live on YouTube chat. I saw your message. Check your private Facebook. I sent the links there. Gail, you mentioned how the popularity that he had, Whitaker in Virginia. Um, I'm not understating this, but during his years as a champion, he was the professional franchise in that state. Um, he was the pride of the Tidewater area. To be specific, for those who do not know, that area has produced a lot of athletes, from Michael Vick to Allen Iverson to Alonzo Mourning to Bruce Smith. Many athletes in football, basketball, baseball specific has come from that area. I mean, if you're into college football, that's one of the prime areas that you do your recruiting. Um, Arguably, he of all the athletes that's come from that specific area of Virginia and throughout the state, he may be the greatest. I'll go to you, Gus, and then you can follow up Daniel. I know Gus, you was kind of off television and social media all day and all evening today, so you just heard about the news. So your reaction to not only the passing of Sweet Pea, but let's just take some time to talk about how wonderful a fighter he was. We often throw the word great around to describe fighters. I think is an overused term. It's used too loosely in all sports, boxing included. Well, when it comes to greats and greatness and in ATG, all-time great, but Pernell Whitaker, he was certainly that. Um, Few fighters like him, few fighters better than him throughout the history of the sport.
Absolutely, Mike. And as you mentioned, I'm still trying to gather my thoughts, being sort of disconnected, from the news and the media today. But when you talk about a fighter who exemplified the sweet science and one of the best defensive boxers, certainly in our generation, you're talking about Pernell. So many memorable moments with him, Mike. When you talk about the prodigious talent, and he was, starting up. I think he started about 8 or 9 years old, but as an amateur, he developed very quickly. He had a phenomenal record. I think he won around 200 in something like 215, 16 fights, if I remember correctly. It took him a little while, Mike. He first went into the World Amateur Championships where he didn't win gold. He was expected to, but he then came back, went to the Pan Americans and won that, and then he went to the Olympic Games. He became a little bit more aggressive in the Pan Americans than he did in the World Championships. So, because of that style, Mike, and we'll talk about it after he turned professional, but after winning the gold medal, 86, and that, he went onwards to turn professional, and the way his career as well, Mike, he wasn't like given soft touches. I remember he fought 2 fights very early on in his career, back to back, and they were a real test. He fought Roger Mayweather, who was like 2-weight world champion, had the WBC lightweight, but the guy before that, Alfredo Lan, who was a puncher as well.
Alfredo Lane, who himself was a former champion as well.
Yeah. At a featherweight, I think he was the champion. Or was it
junior light?
Yeah, super featherweight. Yeah, and that was a good fight actually. So when you're going in back to back against guys of that caliber, sort of in your 11th and 12th fight, you see the talent. And you see the style as well, Mike, when he's fighting up against a lot of these pressure fighters, volume punchers. But he was a guy who had one of the best jabs going, period. He could just control a fight with his jab, the footwork to get around, hit, don't be hit. Yeah, he was winning a lot of the fights, by sort of unanimous decision, by using the sweet signs, not getting in too many wars. People were complaining a little bit that his style was not sort of fan friendly, but you've got to utilize, your skills. But he fought, look at Greg Hagan, Mike, when he fought him. How good was Greg Hagan's chin when Sweet Pea fought him, dropped him. I think he was the first guy to actually drop Greg as well. So, and that was technique. Like, it wasn't just raw power. It was just beautiful timing and technique. And that sort of emphasizes, his complete sort of DNA in terms of a fighter. Nothing pushing your punches, just a natural talent. But he had some hardships, Mike, and it sort of reinforces that his talent wasn't really appreciated even by the judges. If you remember, like when he fought, remember he went to France and I think his first title fight where he actually won the fight. I thought he definitely won. Was it Ramirez he fought in France? Yeah, I think
Ramirez,
yeah.
March of '88.
Yeah. He got a bad decision in that one. The judges gave it to Ramirez, but Sweet Pea that was an 8-4. Anybody who gave that to Ramirez, well, I'm not sure about that, but so he had some hardship, and we know against De La Hoya as well, Mike. He landed, the CompuBox stats are clear. He landed all of the better punches. De La Hoya might have landed the better, sort of heavier power punches, but he was pretty much controlling the fight with his jab, running rings around De La Hoya at times as well. The guy, he just pretty much fought everyone, Mike. Freddie Pendleton fought Buddy. He had some good fights with Buddy McGurk as well, 2 fights with him. I think he still holds the record in terms of unified defenses at lightweight for a unified champion as well. So, that shows he didn't vacate and move up too early. But he went up. I think the only beating he eventually took, Mike, was Trinidad, but he's fighting a guy right at the end of his career, a guy who's a hell of a lot bigger. But look at Sweet Pea's chin, Mike. De La Hoya didn't knock him out, and he was in his prime, a vicious puncher. Even Felix Trinidad, in his prime, couldn't even, knock him out as well. So he had chin. He fought punches. He outboxed a lot of people. Moved up the weights. Fought pretty much all the best as well. Not only in the United States, so he challenged himself not only domestically, internationally. No soft touches. Strong resume throughout. I think only 4 defeats in the end, but he fought all of the best. Definitely one of the best fighters I've ever seen. Still love the style now. Still an inspiration. Love watching these training videos as well. Yeah, will be sorely missed.
Yeah, you mentioned when you first start discussing back on Sweet Pea's career, you mentioned his amateur record. Last week we talked about the video that leaked with Teofimo Stevens and getting knocked down. I think he was a 15, 16-year-old kid. And Teofimo Lopez. And we discussed whether was there a rule broken in which the fact that the video was released was that breaking the old standard that you don't discuss amateur, you don't leak footage of sparring. Why do I say that? I connect it in this way.
Mm-hmm.
A testament to how much of a bad man Pernell Whitaker was. it doesn't get talked about really in detail. Going back to that old adage, you don't talk about stuff that happens in the gym, but it's been long talked about privately in gyms, low key, that in '83, Whitaker, what the dude was looking for some sparring, uh, met a young fighter, a young phenom who I believe had just won a world title. Everybody was talking about as the next star, one Hector Camacho. And the word has been long held that they fought in '83, they sparred
Yep.
in '83 at the Crump Gym, and that Whitaker outclassed Camacho to the point that Camacho was frustrated, ended the sparring session, walked out of the gym. Whitaker was a teenager. Camacho was, I believe, had just won the world title.
Yeah, he was 23, 22 or 23, I think.
That is a sign right there of how good Pernell Whitaker was as an amateur, and we saw how he developed as a pro. You mentioned how Whitaker, in many ways, early on in his career, how he was not only tested tough against the likes of Lane and Mayweather,
Back to back, yeah.
right? And early on, Whitaker was very much a boxer. He still was
Yes,
a boxer for much of his career, but
yes,
there was a bit of a sea change, and that
yes,
sea change was the Ramirez fight, in which he moved around a lot.
yeah.
Notice in the rematch, and for much of his career at lightweights, and even as he moved up, he still had the slickness, but he stood a lot more in the pocket. See, the thing is, what made him, to me, uh, the greatest, arguably the greatest defensive fighter ever, and no doubt in my mind, the greatest defensive fighter post Willie Pep, was he could make you miss in a multitude of ways. People talk about the defensive ability of Floyd Mayweather. Okay, fine. Floyd Mayweather, talented for sure, but part of the reason that Mayweather was so hard to hit was because of his style, his hand position. Whitaker, you couldn't hit Whitaker. How can I put this? Whitaker was unhittable without having to employ the style that Floyd did. And unlike the thing that Floyd could not do was he couldn't stand there in the middle of the ring with his hands down and you still were not able to hit him with not just one punch, but not with just two punches, but 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 punch combinations. That's the
Floyd,
difference between
you're right.
that.
Floyd would literally have to retreat the real space, whereas Pernell could actually do it standing there, planting his feet, just move with the upper body and the head movement to slip all of the punches.
I mean, just look at you mentioned the De La Hoya fight. 33-year-old Sweet Pea versus a 24 strong De La Hoya, who was very, very fast at that age. Look at the number of times where De La Hoya at the end of rounds would try to let off with punches to steal rounds, and Whitaker would stand there, slip, duck, dodge. De La Hoya would celebrate like he had done enough to win the round. He had landed all his punches. But look at the replay, and you witness the number of punches Whitaker made De La Hoya miss with. That's the brilliance of Pernell Whitaker. And people think of him because he was a boxer that he was soft. No. Pernell Whitaker was Terrence Crawford kind of mean in there. He had
Yeah,
that kind of a mean streak. Underrated body puncher. One of these guys who hit harder than his knockout percentage indicates. Because you notice even guys who were aggressive, they didn't bowl him over. And fought arguably the second biggest fight of the decade with Chavez. You mentioned the robbery of Jose Luis Ramirez. To me, the bigger robbery was the fight against Chavez, September '93, all the cards were stacked against him to lose. All of them.
And that was just after fighting Buddy McGirt.
Right. Fighting in San Antonio, 60,000 fans. Everybody in the building was rooting for Chavez. Chavez was thought to be this indestructible force. And Whitaker not only outboxed Chavez. Chavez was known for his toughness. By the end of that fight, Whitaker had Chavez on the back foot and stunned him.
Yeah, and at times was beating him inside the pocket as well.
Exactly.
At Chavez's distance, his prime distance, like when he was trying to get to the body, he was doing a great job of just like blocking Chavez's left hook with his elbows and his forearms. It was weird technique, just sort of rotating and just beating him with that right hand straight down the pipe as well. Yeah, Chavez he couldn't fight him too well inside the pocket. When I saw that, Mike, I was like, whoa, this guy is the real deal, even at short range.
Shout out to Diaz Kennels 210 in the chat. You're absolutely right with your commentary. He says that Sweet Pea could make you miss in the phone booth. Absolutely right. Yeah. That's the difference between him and other fighters who are known for their defense. I'll go to you, Gail, and you can go and get into this discussion. Whitaker specifically at lightweight. There's been the debate is who was better? Who was the best at lightweight ever? Him, old school like Leonard or Benny Leonard or Roberto Duran. In a choice between the Hands of Stone and Whitaker, just for having fun here, who would you pick as the best lightweight ever?
Oh, Whitaker. Whitaker over Duran, without question. It's a little tougher call with Leonard, and I think in that case, it honestly ends up being a matter of taste of the individual fan. As good as Duran was and could be, Whitaker hands down.
You've got to put Manny Pacquiao in that bracket as well, Mike. At that weight, he was phenomenal.
True. Funny you should say that on a week where we're going to see him fight as a 40-year-old. Crazy.
Problem is Pacquiao didn't fight enough in the division. He just didn't. Not at 35. He didn't do enough. Didn't fight enough there. And the guy he beat for the title, Diaz. No, I can't. Not in my book.
How you really feel?
I can't. I'm being honest here. I can't. You can't. I'm not gonna. I can't put Manny Pacquiao because of the limited time he had in the division. I mean, he fought at 30. He won the title. I'm not even sure if he defended the title. If he did, it wasn't more than once. Yeah, and then he moved up 2 weights to fight De La Hoya. I can't put him there.
His career has been so long. In all fairness, a lot of it blurs. We remember the very young, small Pacquiao, and we, have a.
He didn't move up to 47. He moved up to 40 to fight Ricky Hatton. Then eventually De La Hoya, but still, Pacquiao didn't do enough at that weight to put him at all-time great in the caliber of Whitaker. No.
But as a fighter, Mike, I don't think anybody would have beaten Pacquiao.
I don't know about that.
I think he would have beaten Duran. I think he would. Too much power and speed for most people, Mike.
Whitaker establishes his jab, makes Pacquiao come forward, and we all know how Pacquiao likes to leap in, and at times he can really you can see the left hand coming because he makes certain moves. Whitaker was too smart and educated for that. He could see it a mile away, adjust and counter and get out the way.
If Pacquiao would come back, he could just come back with attack after attack after attack with better foot speed.
Yeah, true. But would he be able to hit him? Would be able to hit him? That's my thing. Pacquiao could throw punches and bunches, but would he be able to hit him consistently enough?
Pacquiao wins it for me, Mike. I've got no doubt personally.
We'll agree to disagree and move on. But let's just sum this up, Gail. The life and the career of Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. I know he had his issues outside the ring. We can have that discussion another day, but I want to focus on the positive. Kind of wrap up this kind of our little commemoration of one Pernell Whitaker.
Now, obviously, yes, you know what history could have been, should have been against some of those humans. Nevertheless, one of the finest defensive stylists in the boxing world is ever seen, who still entertains fans, who never turned down a fight, who fought and won in multiple weight classes, and was just demons aside, a good human being. Rest in power.
One more question here. The SK Kennel says, what about Mosley at 35? I'll leave that up to you, Gus, and then I'll give a follow-up in comparison to Sweet Pea.
Mosley at lightweight.
Yeah.
It's always very difficult to compare fighters from different generations. What did he have? 35 fights at lightweight. Pretty much was knocking everybody out as well. But this the thing with Mosley, it's always going to be harbored in controversy, Mike, because we know he was on EPOs for a hell of a long time, Mike, which gave him that speed. So it's very difficult to give a true perspective of his talent and how he would compare if he was unaided. So, but I think Pernell Whitaker beats him all day long, Mike.
I would tend to agree. Listen, Mosley had a dominant reign at 135. It would have been interesting had he had fought Stevie Johnson or especially Orzabek Nazarov at that weight. I'm talking the Nazarov before he went he took that trip to Russia, and he basically got beat up and had his eye damaged. He wasn't the same. Yeah. Because the Orzabek Nazarov that destroyed Joey Gamache and the Nazarov that we saw destroy Lee Evander Johnson. In short, the Nazarov that we saw up to the fight in Paris in '98 against Mendy, that Nazarov was hell. People don't know it because people don't know much about him, but that Nazarov was hell in the ring. But it would have been nice to see Mosley fight that Nazarov pre Jean-Baptiste Mendy.
Yeah, I think fighters who generally had a very good dominant jab, Mosley struggled with, even at times at lightweight, Mike. So I think Pernell's jab would have been a massive obstacle for him.
And for me, Mosley was better when fighters came to him mid-range out.
Yeah.
And if in this fight he would have had to come in, he would have had to go in. Mosley was strong as a bull, but he wouldn't have been able to hit Whitaker with any consistency. And I think from a mental standpoint, that Mosley was a little bit weaker mentally than what it doesn't seem that way because he was so dominant, but once he faced adversity as he moved up, you saw mentally he kind of checked out, particularly against Forrest. I think that susceptible aspect to him would have been there at lightweight because he had it all his way early on in his career, and Whitaker would have frustrated the hell out of Mosley at time. I just don't think he would have been able to handle it. The fact that he wouldn't be able to hit Whitaker consistently to head or body would have been tough for him. I think Whitaker would be able to find Mosley body at certain points of the fight, and just overall, he would be too much from a boxing standpoint for one Sugar Shane Mosley, DSK.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, Mike, Pernell had a little bit more. He was more dynamic in his game, but he was also a lot more patient. If the first 6, 7, 8 rounds weren't going as well, he could just grind it out, frustrate you even more mentally, and then come back a little bit later with a couple of. Mosley just never really had that patience in the fight.
Right. Poli Diaz is an example of that, where early on, Diaz, because of his aggressiveness, because of his awkward style and, quite frankly, how dirty he was in the early points of that fight. Him and Diaz had beef going back a while when Whitaker fought in Spain and as part of the WBC convention. I know we're getting a little bit nerdy here, and the discussion is going on, but to give a quick summary, Whitaker fought in Spain, non-title bout. This coincided with the WBC annual convention in 1990.
Yeah.
Diaz was there. He was his number 1, number 2 contender at the time, number 1. He got into it with Diaz. As a matter of fact, you can find the fight on YouTube. And if you watch the end of the fight in Spain, Whitaker was yelling at someone in the crowd. The person who he was yelling at was Paulie Diaz. And the week of the fight, Diaz had taunted Whitaker, gave him some trouble early, but this is where the mean streak, what I mentioned too earlier, came in. And the patience that you just brought in, that you just mentioned, Gus, he stayed patient. He focused on Diaz's body and beat him up to the point that he broke 2 of his ribs. That's the mean streak. And he used that body work, and he eventually began to outbox him later on, but the body work was savage. So it's that aspect of patience and mean streak that Mosley did not face at 135. That's the intangibles part that Mosley did not have to deal with in his career. And because of that, coupled with the skill level of Whitaker, I give him the advantage over a Shane Mosley. But to wrap this up again, sad development that took place that came across the newswire, boxing newswire this morning. We at Pound for Pound Boxing Report are deeply gutted, but in spite of our pain, there's still a lot of things to celebrate. Pernell Whitaker, what can you say? Marvelous fighter, one of the best to ever lace on a pair of gloves, and to show his legacy. Whenever you hear stories of a slick boxing southpaw, the name that they will compare that fighter to, Pernell Whitaker. When you talk any lightweight, since he was had a dominant reign, the fighter that they will compare him to is Pernell Whitaker. When you talk great athletes from the state of Virginia, the athlete they will compare him to is Pernell Whitaker. So he left a long and lasting legacy. Prayers, thoughts, condolences to his family, and we here at Pound for Pound Box Report again. Thank you, Pernell Whitaker, for what you did for the sport. Thank you, Pernell Whitaker, for the fun, the long-lasting memories you gave us as boxing fans. You will be deeply and sorely missed. And there it is, folks, an abbreviated episode 259 Pound for Pound Box Report. As I said at the beginning, due to power outages, had to cut the original live recording, and what you're hearing right now is our tribute to one Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. I want to first and foremost thank Gail from Communities Digital News, Gus from Corruption and Boxing, Daniel from The Inspirer for joining me. I am your host, Michael. Episode 259, our tribute to one Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. We'll see you guys next time on Pound for Pound Boxing Report, where we discuss all things boxing.